that I had seen when I was 3, but it had turned the wattage down so I could perceive it better. And it kind of smiled. It had like normal human cheekbones, and I could see the blood coursing through the veins. I could see the beating heart in the chest cavity. It talked about what these beings of light had talked about when I was 3 years old, and that was time. I don't remember the details of the conversation, but it was always about time. And so this being spoke of time. I understood, but I couldn't understand. And so I don't know how long I was with this being, but I was returned, and suddenly I was in my bed. My spirit was returned to my body. I was waking up in my bed, and both my phones were on the floor. And what I returned with, besides going, oh my God, I really did try to call 911, was I had a burn on the right side of my temple. It was the size of a coin. And the rim of my eye where that light had been was burned. The entire lid of my eye was burned. I also had a burn on my right thigh, the size of a cigarette butt. So when I look at the symbolism of that, the physical marks on my body, to me, were symbols of a very poignant and important lesson. And that is, I needed to remember, because I had forgotten, I had moved away from my roots of journeying in spirit and connecting with spirit, was to be in my right brain. I was so much in my left in the intellectual. I was into materialism and consumerism. So whenever I become less spiritual, less compassionate, caring, less, I don't study as much, and I am not a good person, that burn on the side of my head returns, as well as my left eye. When it was looked at medically by medical professions, it was said that if it continues to do that, the medicine that they were giving me, I would become blinded eventually in my left eye. So I would be constantly perceiving through my right brain, my right eye. So it's almost like this event took place to remind me to see the right way, to see the right path, through the right pathway, the right brain. My walk in life is to do this type of studying and to have these type of experiences. That was what I chose to do, and so my experience supports that. The burn on my right leg went away because in that very moment I knew, and I stepped onto the right path, the right square. You know, the black and white floor come later to understand is the floor base consciousness. It's the game board, and we want to step off of that game board. We want to step up onto the steps.
Right.
So I stepped off of that game board in that day. I took the white checker, the right path, the path of light.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, those symbolisms are all ancient mystery school symbolisms. Now, I didn't know about those things then. It's just a story. You don't have to believe me, but maybe you'll learn something from it.
Of course I believe you. Of course I believe you.
Well, not you. I'm speaking to your audience.
Oh, well, yeah.
I know you do.
Well,
but that's the symbolism of it for me. So nature has a language. Spirit has a language. Your experiences may be quite different from mine, but Bigfoot seems to try to communicate with people through sticks and stones and glyphs and things in nature. So there may be something for them to look at from that perspective.
Well, but it is interesting that now, do you remember? Now, of course, when you went through the pillars, when Freemasonry, I would imagine that's Jacob, Boaz and Jacob, and the three. Do you remember how many steps there were? Was there,
I can't remember how many steps there were in my vision. I didn't count them. At that time, I was not conscious of that. And I honestly can't look back on it and say how many there were.
No.
But I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
I get what you're saying. There's probably more to look at.
Yeah.
I did ask a friend of mine. I usually drum for other people. I do sonic driving for other people so they can have visionary experiences. Anyone who comes to my house always says, I want to, become, have an altered state. Can you do that? And so I'll drum for them. And So I've never had anyone else do it for me, but my friend Erin Jackson, who's quite the drummer, she makes drums, fabulous drums actually. She drummed for me one night. I asked her to, and she did. And I wanted to return to that place, that being, and I wanted to find out what it was. And so outside one night, pitch black, Washington State, she started drumming, and I went into my visionary state, and I journeyed to communicate with this being and find it and have a conversation. So I had a very personal experience with this being. My questions were answered. The being is a being of light. It seems to be able to lower its wattage. I don't know how else to describe it, but when I returned from my spiritual journey, Erin had stopped drumming, and her eyes were wide as saucers, and she was looking up at the starry sky. And I was so excited when I returned because one of the symbols that the being gave to me was a ball of light. It's symbolic stuff.
Right.
And I took this ball of light into my body, and so when I came back out of it, I was like, oh my God, Erin, I feel like I'm just filled with power. I could shoot a lightning bolt right out of my finger. In that very moment, as I see her eyes wide like saucers, the entire county lit up like daylight, like a flash bulb went off. The whole county lit up. Everything was daylight, like pop, like that.
Mm-hmm.
And Erin says, oh my God, the biggest meteor you've ever seen just came through the atmosphere right above your head.
Wow.
So, okay, so it was a natural event. It was just a meteor, passing through our atmosphere. But how many times does a meteor like that pass through the atmosphere, light up the whole county? At the same time, you just journeyed to find a light being that gave you a meteor, a glowing ball of light. And, the synchronicity of it is incredible. This is why I say this stuff is so random. It's personal. It's precognitive.
Yeah.
It doesn't perform at the surface. Good luck experimenting with it or getting any evidence. But you will have experiences that to you leave no doubt in your mind.
Yeah.
But it's personal. So when I talk about it, it's just a story.
Yeah.
Science guys, close your ears. It's impossible, but it happens. Well, it's impossible, but it happens.
Well, this is the thing that we've often all sat around, and said, "Hey, this is a great campfire story." But you can't, and that's all you can really, that's all you can say it is. But to some people, you can say, well, it's way more than that. But then at the same time, it does come down to some of our own explanations, and I think that's interesting. That how do you deal with that, Alyssa, when people want to sort of say, oh well, this is her interpretation, so that's got to be my interpretation. How do you feel about that? I want them to have their own skeptical mind. Don't believe me. Whatever you do your own work. You are meant to do your own studies and your own experimentation and your own observation. These things are not meant to be turned into a religion or a control or one person has the truth or one person has all the rules. When I see that happening, it really kills me. It saddens me. We can share all our stuff, but, God forbid, even on a tiny level, you start telling people, you can't do it without me, and you can't I'm right, and I know. You don't know. Uh-huh.
I don't know. I know that these things happen. I don't discount anyone's story, but the perception it's not just about perception. It's just different for everybody. Nature has a language. It speaks to you. It is symbolic, but sometimes there aren't 100% universal symbols involved. As we know, symbols have many meanings, and there are many symbols that happen just for you.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you want to look at it scientifically or pseudoscientifically from Carl Jung's perspective, it's still very, very personal. And personally, I don't feel that any of this is meant to become something for the masses. I think that the masses can all be, or at one time we're all invited to discover it and study it. But when you start saying everybody's got this truth. There are truths. Yes, I believe there are truths. I don't feel comfortable saying what mine are or what I think they are because, that's crossing a boundary.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that these compartmentalized experiences that happen to people beneath the truth, the big thing, these are all personal and they're all unique and different just as we are. They're taking us all to the same end game and the same place, but they take us in different ways.
Right. And I think that this is one of those things where I think that, I've made that mistake. I've made that mistake by saying, well, this is the way I was taught to do it, and this is how I did it, and so this is the way that you need to do it. And that's something I had to learn from. And,
well, no. I mean, I know your heart. What you're saying is, hey, try this. It might be good for you too. This is what my people did. I do the same thing.
Yeah.
I share what I have, what skills or what tools or what little things I have that help people find their own walk. And you're just trying to share something that's exciting to you. I mean, that's why I speak. I mean, everybody knows I don't charge for, my book isn't published and released yet, but I won't charge a dime for that. People will pay for it, but that money's going to a foundation. I don't charge for speaking. I don't charge for lectures. I don't charge for conferences. And there's a reason for that.
Yeah.
So now I forgot where I was going with the whole purpose of that.
No, I understand.
Yeah, so much for thinking on many different levels.
Well, no, but your point of the matter is that I think that you wanted to make it clear that.
Sharing, yeah. When you're sharing something, you share it like, okay, well, try this. It's not like if you don't do this and you don't do it my way, then forget it.
Yeah.
Then it starts becoming a religion, which is really just a cult, which is really kind of governmenty feeling and icky, right, and doesn't go with the whole mystery school thing.
Well,
an inversion of it.
Yeah, and so we've talked about your book, and you've been working on your book for quite a long time.
It's been finished for almost 2 years now. It's been finished.
But
it's with a friend who's doing the photo copyright and photo stuff,
right,
and I told him to take his time because recently, as you know, I had that terrible internet slithering experience.
Right.
I don't feel comfortable talking about family stuff, but let's just say that it was better that I wait. And when I journeyed on it and asked the spirits, which are they my subconscious or are they autonomous and conscious beings, they really said you need to wait. So, I take my own advice or the spirit's advice, however you want to look at it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm waiting. I'm intentionally holding it back. I tell people, well, it's the photos and things like that. That's part of it. But even if those photos were ready, I don't think I would release it right now. And that's okay with me. I mean, I don't care.
Yeah.
That's fine with me. When the time's right, it'll come out and it'll probably be stuff you've heard already.
Well, but that's one of those things where we all go through that. We all go through that. People say, well, why don't you ever write a book about your experiences, or why don't you ever write a book about this? And I always say, well, because my interpretation of this today is not going to be what it is 2 years from now, because I'm going to talk to a lot more people, and I'm going to say, well, maybe they're right.
Yeah.
That's maybe. I mean,
it's a journey. I mean, mine was. People seem to think that my book is going to be about, global sites. It is not. There are people like Patricia Awan and Freddie Silva, people that traveled to many spots of the fawn. They call them something else. They call them power places. But these people went and did some deep research and spent time. And if you want to read about spots of the fawn, read their books. Amazing, Mine is about my own experience in one spot of the fawn. What happened to me, how it took me off guard, and how it really pushed me further down this path. So my book isn't about, global spots of the fawn. I talk about global spots of the fawn now, but I have zero experience compared to the greats out there, people that really have spent time in these places and gone to every single one.
But I think that that's probably what